London. Representative Fiorello, you have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I associate my remarks with everyone who's come before me. Thank you so much to the proponents for their patient answering of our questions. And I have a few questions of my own through you, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed, madam.
I was looking at the section on Section 92. It requires the governor to sort of look at the budget or the economy of the state through a different lens. My question was, could the proponent please explain why this has been added now through you, Mr. Speaker?
Representative Abercrombie. Would you? No, we'll stand at ease then. Saw that phase there. No way. Representative Fiorello, we're just waiting for the chair to come in. We'll just stand at ease for a minute.
Happy to stand at ease.
Representative Fiorello, would you mind repeating your question?
Not at all. My question through you, Mr. Speaker, is Section 92 makes a request of the governor to make remarks or recommendations on our state economy through the lens of equity. It's quite detailed, and I wanted to understand why is this portion here? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentlelady for her question. The whole issue about equity has been a very common word that we've heard over and over again, especially since the beginning of the pandemic. And yet we never seem to quite understand exactly what we're trying to say or what we're going to accomplish. So the idea was this time we needed to understand how equity is being demonstrated in the different aspects of the budget so that we can make sure that the whole objective is the end result of equity for all people in the state of Connecticut. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Fiorello.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, because that clarity is so important. We need rule of law where our laws can make sense and people can understand them. And so the definition of equity is really comprehensive. I wanted to understand sort of if we could put it into plainer language, but it seems from my reading of it that equity through, it says efforts, regulation, policy, and programs are looking at patterns of discrimination, whether current, past, present, or even future. Discrimination, no more disparities in outcome for any class protected. Is that a fair? Is the equal outcome for the protected classes, is that the goal for equity? Is that a good description through you, Mr. Speaker?
Representative Walker.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, the goal is to make sure that we achieve what we say we're trying to achieve as we go through the budget. Many times people use the word equity, but is never demonstrated or explained. And again, we're trying to make sure that those goals are very clear for all, and whatever policy we are adopting, we make sure that it has the expectations of providing equity, whether it be for women, whether it be for minorities, whether it be for disabled. It's equity. so that all of us have an opportunity. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Fiorello.
Right, and I think that's where it just got confusing through you, Mr. Speaker, because the proponents said equity and outcomes and opportunity. It's all kind of mushy again. So are we talking about working towards equal outcomes, or are we talking about working towards equal opportunity? And I think that's a very important distinction for the state of Connecticut. This is what our governor's eyes are focused on. Is it equal outcomes or equal opportunity? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Walker.
I thank the gentlelady for her question. It's more of making sure that what the governor is planning on doing in the budget leads to equity for the identified population that he is trying to affect.
Representative Fiorello.
Okay, I won't push two more, but I think if you look at the language of the bill, we are talking about outcomes. The word outcomes comes out several times here. And that points to what we saw recently in the current article had I don't know if it's front page or not, but it talked about our state's COVID policy and how in order to achieve equity, our state COVID policy had a targeted campaign to boost the testing and vaccinations among Black and Hispanic people. So that is a state program that, had a health focus through the lens of race. And it seems to me that if our state is going to be focused on equity outcomes, we can probably expect more of these kinds of policies that are almost violations of the 1964 Civil Rights Act that prohibits discrimination based on race. And this is a very, something that people need to be very careful about. We need to pay attention to Connecticut pursuing policies that will actually discriminate. The policies themselves will be for only segmented groups of people, and unfortunately, it sounds like it could be through the lens of race, which would make it racist. So we don't want racist policies, and I think that this section 92 is a huge red flag. The next section that I wanted to ask about was section 84. It talks about free menstrual products. Through you, Mr. Speaker, I understand that there is an amendment across the aisle, but I did read through the amended language, and it seems like it's still keeping in the idea that boards of ed shall, that's mandate, provide free menstrual products in women's bathrooms, all gender bathrooms, and at least one men's restroom. And I was wondering, why is it the state policy now to mandate menstrual products in men's bathrooms? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Walker.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, equity.
Representative Fiorello.
Okay, so because of equity, we are going to put menstrual products in one male restroom. It says, is this for every district? And the money should come from, it says, boards may accept donations, grants, or work with a partner from a nonprofit. If those funding venues are not available, how are they supposed to pay for these now free menstrual products? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe that in there we have allocated $2 million in that line item. Through you.
Representative Fiorello.
Okay, so there's $2 million for the menstrual program, and that is a one-time $2 million. So going forward, town school budgets will have to include this soon-to-be, in the future, unfunded mandate. Is that correct? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Walker.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, as we all know, the ARPA dollars will last for several other years, so we have opportunity to evaluate what we do and how we use it and see if we need to allocate more until we get a complete stream of donations and other methods of covering those expenses, because we feel it's extremely important that young ladies have the understanding that their natural process is the usage of these types of things, and we want to make sure that they understand them and we help with their development and growth. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Fiorello.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am all for helping young ladies, but we're putting menstrual products in men's bathroom. Um, also, it says grades 3 to 6, but higher grades, people menstruate as well. So what was the reason to stop it at grade 6? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Walker.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, I thank the good lady for noticing that error. We are going to address it because it's supposed to be 3 through grade 12. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Fiorello.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did miss that because I read the amendment and I was like, what's changed here? But that is what's changed. So the bill is actually mandating free, because not free, but free menstrual products up to grade 12. Thank you for that clarity. The next section I wanted to go to was about the science curriculum mandate on climate change. I wanted to ask, so we have a lot of things in education, and up until now, this has always been a may. If you would like, school districts can take on the next generation science standards. And I understand he's been questioned before, and I heard the answers that we're doing it as a mandate because every district is not actually teaching the next generation science standards. My question through you is that there's many studies on different curriculums, and I did find one remark that according to the Brock Educational Journal, which published in 2020, the next generation science standards is known as it frames climate change as the result of human activity. It is considered among the state science standards to be the strongest in its integration of human-influenced climate change curricula. So my question is, now that we are mandating this, do we have any opt-out for school districts, or are there options on other climate change science curricula that the districts could teach? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Sanchez.
Through you, Mr. Speaker. As I stated before, currently what we're teaching in regards to climate change is in the next generation science standards. I'm not completely sure what that curriculum is, but I know that it's been taught through the school districts for years. And all we're doing here is just codifying what most schools should do in regards to climate change. This is why we're changing it from a may to shall. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Fiorello.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think all of us would want to agree that science is important. Climate change is hard to deny. The climate changes. Our problem is that the lessons of climate change can be taught as requiring drastic economic changes. And there is a difference in whether or not those solutions are what would really bring the solution to climate change. But so I think that answers my question, that we have to teach the next generation science standards. And I thank the good gentleman for that clarity, that we have to teach climate change and we have to teach the next generation version of it. Okay, my last question is about Section 169. This adds gender dysphoria to the reproductive health bill that we just passed. 5414 just passed. I think it just passed last night in the Senate. And we're adding new language that says, what does it say here? All medical care relating to treatment of gender dysphoria. So this is a totally different topic. It's hugely controversial, whether you're looking at it through the lens of the parents who are not told about it or the children who are going through it. I mean, this is a hugely topical, a major conversation to be had, and yet there was, as I understand it, no public hearing on the topic of gender dysphoria. I know that this topic is also a part of the amendment it doesn't change the fact that gender dysphoria is going to be a part of this budget bill. So through you, Mr. Speaker, why was this added and without a public hearing? Through you.
Representative Walker.
Thank you. Sorry to the gentle lady from Greenwich. I had to take care of something. I did not hear the question, so could she repeat that question for me, please?
Can you,
Yes,
Representative,
yes.
repeat the
In fact,
question?
that's fine. The bill that we passed, that this is being attached to, is a reproductive health bill. And I guess my question is, can you explain the nature of reproductive health in gender dysphoria, which has now been attached to this bill? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Walker.
I guess in some respects we are understanding that there are a variety of people that have different needs in this community and society, and we're addressing all of them. And again, we go back to, I like the theme, equity, making sure that there is equity in, excuse me, in curriculum and information that's out there for people that have different walks of life. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I will recognize Representative Curry on this question. Representative Curry, please proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And through you, Mr. Speaker, in the bill that originally passed out, this language that the representative references, while not included specifically, we are actually just clarifying and specifying existing language in the bill that originally passed out of the House and the Senate. There is language in the definition that discusses including, and this would be including, and so instead we're just breaking that out in order to specify through you.
Thank you, sir. Representative Fiorello.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So am I to understand that gender dysphoria was a part of 5414? Through you, Mr. Speaker?
Representative Curry.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, the definition that was provided for reproductive health care services did include this as the including section. Through you.
Representative Fiorello.
I'm sorry, I feel like I have to find the original language, but did it include, what does that mean, including? Did it include the topic of gender dysphoria? Because that gender dysphoria is, like I said, it's highly topical, it's very controversial. It was just not discussed around 5414. So am I being told that it was in the bill? That's what I want to clarify.
Yep.
Representative Curry.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, while not specifically stated in the bill that passed, this was part of the including but not limited to.
Representative Fiorello.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. A lot of the controversies around this is not so much that people are opposed to them in and of themselves, but it's the fact that all of this is in the context of having no parental notification rights. And that's what is so essential. It's the linchpin of all of this surrounding healthcare access for our children. And for gender dysphoria related to children, and in this medical bill, it was not discussed. And I think it's a huge disservice to the people of Connecticut that this topic gets slipped into the budget bill when it should have been, vigorously discussed among the representatives of the people. I guess I'll come to my closing, my remarks now. Thank you to those who answered the questions. This bill is 484 sections. It's 673 pages. And I really appreciate a lot of the information that came out through the discussion about what's in the bill. That's so illuminating because it is hard for each of us to truly read through every section. But what I see as a top line is not the tax cuts, but the increased spending. I mean, overall, this is $500 million of increased spending from the original fiscal year 23 to the now revised fiscal year 23. And there's a lot of details that can get lost, but I think the people of Connecticut will understand that things like equity, you know, for menstrual products for men, or climate change with one particular curriculum being mandated, or gender dysphoria being put into this bill without a proper discussion. And I didn't ask, but you know, the people of Connecticut are also supporting undocumented children in this budget, and I think it's fair that there be accountability for how many children are we supporting. And actually, I did have a remark on that one, is the whole offering these services for undocumented children and now expanding it to age 19, these kinds of bills always sound great. And it sounds like you're doing something really wonderful, and you are on one level. But there is so much more to bills like this. And, you know, this is an incentive for a huge and evil human trafficking industry out there that we cannot turn our eye away from. With our kinds of policies, we are aiding and abetting this evil thing that's going on, human trafficking, creating an incentive for them to come across the border and endure and create that market for them and endure such evil. It is also a thumb in the face, or thumb in the eye, I'm not great with idioms, in the eye of all the legal immigrants in our state. We have amazing legal immigrants, and we should celebrate legal immigration. And every time we have a chance to get in front of a microphone or a camera, we should be talking about fixing the legal immigration process. And bills like this are not helping those we say we want to help the most, and especially to the good people of Connecticut who are supporting so many people who need help. I think there should be real account for how many children, what is the cost, and who are these children, because we don't know what kind of horrors these people are enduring to come to our borders, and we should not be aiding and abetting in that. And we should have true and total respect for law and order and the legal immigration process. Back to my comments on the bill. I just think, this is my first time here, you know, I just think a budget should make more sense. I think a budget should show that it's consistent, that it has predictable money systems in it, and this doesn't. We know this isn't sustainable. We've been told that, you know, the money's going to run out. And I feel that the people of Connecticut would better understand a budget that has, I don't know, some kind of a simple structure, you know, 50% for the needs of the people, 30% for the wants of the people, 20% for savings, and paying off our debt. I mean, that would be a wonderful big picture for the people of Connecticut to understand. The budget is also not a true picture of the revenues and spending. It doesn't include all of the non-appropriated funds. Non-appropriated funds is all the nickel and diming that the Connecticut government does against the people of Connecticut. And tax expenditures. Those are all the special tax breaks we give to special interest groups, like we just gave to Sikorsky the other day. None of that is reflected in the true budget picture of our state. This is only the appropriated funds. So, you know, this huge document is really difficult for the people of Connecticut to understand. I think this is anti-logic, it's anti-common sense, anti-common ground. It's out of touch with the regular people of Connecticut. That's the kind of budget this is. And I hope we can do better, and I hope some folks across the aisle will join me in rejecting this kind of budget. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Abercrombie, with the floor, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good evening.
Good evening, madam.
I rise in full support of this budget. And I have to tell you that some of the comments from my colleague I'm appalled at. This budget does so many great things for the people of Connecticut, and each and every one of us can take pride in it. Are there pieces in here that each of us would like to change? Absolutely. But let's talk about what this budget does, okay? Let's start with the biggest issue that some of my colleagues have talked about, which is the undocumented. Last year, we did a bill, and it was in the budget, to age 9. Age 9. It was voted on, came out of committee. This year, in the budget, what we do is we raise it to age 12, which this is the second year of the biennium, and a lot of times we make an adjustment. That's what we did. We made an adjustment. We didn't go to 19. If people read the bill, we did not go to 19. We went to age 12. What we did was we grandfathered the kids that are 12 and under, because a child that has asthma at age 12 still has asthma at 13. And these children deserve to have that insurance. Let's talk about some of the other things that we do in this budget. If you talk to any of the nonprofits out there, they are so excited that finally, in over 12 years of having deficits, we were able to give them the money that they deserve. They take care of our most vulnerable population, and every year we have cut them. And I know for a fact, because I've been here for 16 years, and I've had to make those hard decisions, and I can't tell you how proud I am of what we were able to do for them in this budget. You talk about the ARPA dollars, and you talk about not spending them. If you ask any nonprofit out there or any organization if they would like a one-time grant, they say yes. They say yes, and it would be foolish of us to not use those dollars. We talk about what our constituents ask of us. Let's talk about what we do for them in this budget. We've been asked for years to end the taxes on pension and annuity. We do that in this budget. Is it everything that everybody would like? Would they like us to raise the cap totally? Absolutely. But at the same time, everybody talks out of the other side of their mouth that we need to be fiscally responsible. That's what we do in this budget. We do the best we can within the dollars that we have. That's what we do in this budget. There is something for everybody in this budget, from ECS to healthcare to let's talk about all the great things in here for our seniors. That's what this budget does. So if we want to be honest here, let's talk about the real things in the budget. I hear some of my colleagues talk about they weren't included in it. Well, I don't know what goes on in finance, and I'm not saying any disrespect to my good chair, but let's talk about what we do on appropriations. We have subcommittees, and subcommittees are bipartisan. And every initiative that my subcommittee's members on the other side of the aisle asked to be put in there was put in there. $250,000 for my colleague on the other side of the aisle for a child guidance center. It's in there. The asks are in the budget, and I can prove it because I was at the table. So when my colleagues say that they weren't part of it, they're not telling the truth, at least on the appropriation side of it. So I ask my colleagues to vote in favor of this budget, and I think that we all can take pride in it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative.